So I feel like I should start by explaining what an Undyne attack is, because I never actually did that last time. So for my definition, an Undyne attack is an attack that happens while your soul is green. You can't move, but you're given a shield. The shield is pointed in the direction of the last arrow key you press, and spears can come from one of 4 directions. Blocking a spear makes it disappear permanently, and you get plenty of warning before a spear arrives. So a simple premise. I've always thought it would be easy to automate, so it shouldn't be too hard to detect where the spear is coming from and press the appropriate direction, right? But I never tested it. A few months back, I remembered that thought, and settled on automating a part of Disbelief Papyrus, a game designed to be one of the harder Mac games, to push that theory to its limits. I made a few quick scripts in Python and C++, and came to the conclusion that Python wasn't fast enough, and C++ couldn't input correctly for that specific project, and was barely too slow. But it was possible. But there's a reason I uploaded that video as a failure. It's because I knew it would motivate me to keep going. I've made developments since then, but since it's meant to be a tutorial and all, I'll start by showing you how I got the code up until the point of the last video, because I didn't want to showcase code that didn't work last video. So, install Visual Studio as normal. Once you're in the installer, you want to make sure you have desktop development with C++ enabled. Then once you're in, create a new project, filter it to C++, C++ console app. Call it whatever, and we're in. So first things first, we're never going to use IOStream. Include Windows 8. The idea is to start with the function that I'm using to get a specific pixel. So I've just quickly added the function that I use for getting the coordinates on screen. It's going to go through it quickly. So HDC is, I believe, just a reference to the current screen. And I'm pretty sure this is just getting a reference of your current monitor. In case you couldn't tell, this stuff isn't mine. So you can store the colors of the pixel in a color ref, get pixel, that's a function. I'm acting like I'm trying to explain this, but it's code that works, and it's code that I didn't have anything to do with. Although I will say, I know this just deletes HDC screen. So it doesn't create a memory leak or anything. From there, you can get the RGB value of the pixels. I threw them into an array, just like first item is red, second item is green, third item is blue, and return the array. This bit I did do, because it's simple. So I've realized I can't type and explain because my keyboard is loud as hell. Like, me talking doing this isn't going to work, so code is just going to appear, and I'll explain it. So this is just the coordinates I calculated in the last video. So say I just pulled up a random attempt, went to the right bit, and full screened. About here, like right in the middle, is 960x and 540y. Black is equal to 20 because for some reason some forms of black have a red or green value that's like 17 or something. So we're just taking it so that any black pixels have a red and green value of less than 20. And these are the RNG values for the shield. So all pixels in the shield have an R value between 35 and 65, and a G value between 50 and 70. There's one more thing that I am going to quickly do, just so that we don't have to use any code that I'm unfamiliar with. This press key. So if I were to go through it, int key is a virtual key code. I know that much. There's a type of input store. You change the type into an input keyboard. You give it a hardware code for key. You make it last 0 milliseconds longer than it needs to, and something. You set the virtual key of it to whatever key you pass in. For example, OX41 is A, and you set it to a press, and then send that input. Okay, the last function we need is to detect if something is a spear. So we're going to use all of this stuff here. We're going to pass an array of colors of size 3. If it's looking familiar, it's because the input of this is going to be the output of this. So this is the fundamental of what we're going to do. We're going to have a check of if it's a black pixel, a check of if it's a white pixel, and a check of if it's past the shield. And then if it's any of those, then we return it's not a spear, but if it's none of those, then we return that it is a spear. Starting with is black, if the R and G values are both under 20, then it's a black pixel. So as a quick reminder, color 0 is R and color 1 is G. We haven't used it yet, but color 2 is blue. White is a lot easier to do. If a color is white, then its R, G, and B values are all equal, and is shield checks between these values up here. So if it falls within these two regions, then it's a part of the shield. Now for the main, we just start with a quick while true to make sure it never ends. We settled on checking 80 pixels out from the midpoint and 120 pixels out from the midpoint. So I've just done it like this so we can edit it later, but this will run for 80 and it will run for 120, because then after then it'll be greater than 121. And we want to get its colors and check if those colors are a spear. This asks for the colors of the pixel in the coordinate that is the midpoint minus 80 or minus 120 and the midpoint y. And we're checking if that is a spear. And then if that's true, we want to press left, and you're just going to have to trust me on this. OX25 is left, and then we add break, because this break, if hit, takes us back to the start of here. So it just saves a little bit of time. And then let's just do the same with the other three. It's just the same thing as before, apart from plus I here, minus I here, and plus I here. So where do we go from here? So firstly, for the sake of not having 10 to 15 minutes per attempt, we're not going to use the press keys for a bit. Make sure you actually didn't take out the IO stream, and then you can use printf, because the first thing I wanted to do was, before I messed with the input code, I wanted to make sure it hits spears 100% of the time. So let's assume this is the current position. The code is going to check, is there a spear? Is there a spear at the midpoint minus 80, which is here? No. So move on to here. But it takes some time for the code to gather the coordinates. So before it does that, this spear moves over slightly. And then it checks, is there a spear here? No. And then this moves over slightly. And then it checks, is there a spear here? Nope. Let's move over. This moves over slightly. Is there a spear here? No. This moves over slightly. Is there a spear here? What have I done? Is there a spear here? No, because it's moved past it. Except for currently, it's worse than that. It checks, is there a spear here? And it's way past. So the first thing we're going to do is set it to only check one coordinate. So remove the loop and just set down here I equals 80. But in terms of the actual logic of what we check, that's the best we can do. So what now? My first thought is that instead of checking here, then here, then here, then here, we need to check here, here, and here. Because if there's a spear here, that doesn't matter, because we're already blocking to the right. So just add a bool last hit equals 0. Let's quickly define what this means. 1 equals left, 2 equals right, 3 equals up, 4 equals down. And so let's set the appropriate things when it activates. And add another if statement here for last hit is not equal to 1. And add the same thing to the others, except for we use 2, 3, and 4. But we have to quickly get rid of the else if, and then there's one last thing to change, because break would now take us to here. So if we quickly replace break with continue, then at any point we hit these continues, it takes us back to the start of the while loop. So that's all that's left in terms of this section. So then we can go to the other ones. Let's start with if spear. If I is always equal to 80, that means we always check these 4. If I actually do it right, so I can make my point. And what do these 4 all have in common? They're not white, and they're not the shield. So we can replace half of this. And while we're here, because this is black, weed is not black. So just add a quick knot around it. And now we're not using any of the shield values. So just get rid of them. And what's better, we're only using 2 of the 3 colors. So if we do a quick overhaul, if we only take 2, we don't even need to gather blue back here. So we can remove blue from the array, and then we're only getting 2 of the 3 colors. Which normally is a bad thing, but we don't need blue, so it should make it more efficient. Before I continue, I will say that the best way to test this code is to run it, pull up footage of an old test, put the console in the corner, and watch the console. It helps to record it so you can go over in slow motion afterwards to make sure it did hit everything at the right time. And after all those optimizations, it did. Well, there was one more optimization, but it's so awful to look at. I want to spare you from it. It didn't even work. It didn't do anything different. And then we had everything we needed. We just needed to work out what's happening with this press key. So firstly, I was wrong last time. I was complaining about press key. Press key isn't a thing. Press key is something that I made. But it makes sense. You grab an input, you make it a keyboard input, and you set it to the virtual key. So after the last video, I did find something out. I was testing some code for an Undertale Yellow video I was making, and I just needed something that pressed Z and X every half a second. So I whipped this up, which theoretically works. So this code sends the input of Z, waits half a second, sends the input of X. Right? I run the code, and I go here, and look, it's doing it. But then if I tap into yellow, it doesn't even register it. Like, if I press Z now, it works. But it's still pressing the virtual keys. And that's when I knew something was really wrong with the virtual keys code. I had convinced myself that C++ just couldn't handle the inputs, because everywhere I looked, people were using send input. After a while I got desperate. I started looking for controller libraries, create your first doesn't support controller. But after a while, I just went back to the default thing. I went back to Microsoft's official documentation on it, and found the example code for sending Windows D. Like, I had never seen the VKLWin before, so I guess I didn't use it. Looking back on it now, it's just up here. Like, this website is so helpful. This is where I get the virtual key codes from, like OX5A, OX5A. But if VKLWin. It's just these. So I don't know why I didn't use it to start. But then I just thought, alright, forget everything I've done. Grab this, because you don't need the rest of it. Throw it in here. Change these to Z. And then see what happens. Like, I was... you also don't need UN. I was desperate enough by this point that I was just trying stuff. That's not how this works. It starts from 0. It's doing it. And if I click in here, it progresses it. So it was the easiest solution in the world. With just a little bit more, I thought I could change int to car. I could change these from the weird virtual key codes to just Z and X, and I could set these to key. Now, with benefit of hindsight, the answer was obvious. I just go into the virtual key codes thing, I find left, right, up, down, just VK left, VK up, VK right, VK down. But no, I didn't think to do that, so I thought that was another dead end. But then I remembered Create Your Frisk supports WASD. And then we test this, and it works.
Wait. I know I got hit. But oh my god! Okay. That's funny that it pressed up.
So it worked out where all the spears were coming from. All that was left was to give it a little bit extra warning, so I just changed the alto coordinate. So you're probably wondering what happened there. Basically, if you're already struggling to get as much performance out of the code as possible, don't stream your screen in 1080p 30 FPS to Discord. After that, there was one more optimization I needed. Because I was hitting blue attacks every time, I just needed an override. I just set it so that when I held the Q key, the code would stop, so I could input a direction that wasn't directly into the blue attack. I'm so excited. No! I haven't done that before! Oh, I wasn't perfect. That was so good. So there was one last part that I needed to use the override for now. Because it's checking too far out, I can no longer do the really slow bit. So now I have to use the override for the slow bit and for the two blue attacks. However, everything else works. When I is 120, it hits every spear at the right time, so all I needed now was a good run. And it's on cue. 1 out of 3. 2 out of 3. No! It was perfect too! I messed it up! I let go. So now there's a new issue. if I run my computer for long enough, eventually it just starts lagging the is key held code. So I let go of Q, but it thought I was still holding it, so it just didn't start the code in time. And yes, I did another run, and the exact same thing happened. I know it's funny. I know it's funny. I know it's good. I know it's funny. It's funny. One, none of it. None of it. We can do that weird thing. And that's three. And that's three. And that's three. Oh, oh! That's it! That's it! Finally! That took so long! Oh no, that took weeks. The end result of weeks of work. Oh my god. Oh no, 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 no. And that was it. I finally had code that worked, that was fast enough, that got me the achievement. So, what now? Going into the game itself, there was one more achievement that I could theoretically have gotten, of no hitting the first phase, because there are some tricks with the first few attacks, but the last attack was so precise I couldn't even macro it. But that's not the point. What I mean is, what's the future for the code? So, if you actually watch the coding part, you should hopefully have the knowledge of how to do code like this. And I can think of quite a few projects that this could be used for. That's why I'm sharing this. If you do end up making anything with this, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. But yeah, also if you need any help, I guess I'm here. But yeah, I guess that concludes the worst coding tutorial you'll ever see.